When I heard that familiar doorbell ring at 8:30 that Friday evening, I never imagined my life was about to change completely. I had just finished a brutal 12-hour shift at the hospital and was looking forward to a quiet night with takeout and Netflix. Through the peephole, I saw my mother, Patricia, standing there with my 12-year-old sister, Ruby, and 8-year-old brother, Marcus. They looked exhausted and defeated, especially the kids who I had not seen in almost 5 years since I moved out. Before I share what happened next, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel because trust me, what my mother did next will absolutely shock you and show you just how selfish some people can truly be. I suppose I should start from the beginning to help you understand just how complicated my relationship with my mother has always been. Growing up in our household meant walking on eggshells constantly because Patricia was the textbook definition of a narcissistic parent. Everything had to revolve around her needs, her emotions, and her drama. If something went wrong in her life, it was somehow always someone else's fault, usually mine since I was the oldest. From the time I turned 10 years old, I became the built-in babysitter for Ruby and Marcus. While other kids my age were playing with friends or joining after-school activities, I was stuck at home making sure my siblings had dinner and help with their homework. Patricia would disappear for hours, or sometimes entire days, leaving me to handle everything. When she would finally return, she would act like nothing had happened and get angry if any of us questioned where she had been. The breaking point came when I turned 18 and received my acceptance letter to nursing school. Patricia threw an absolute fit when I told her I was moving out. She screamed that I was abandoning the family and that Ruby and Marcus needed me. But I knew if I did not leave, then I would never escape. So I packed my bags, got a small apartment near the campus, and cut off all contact with her for the next 5 years. Those years of freedom allowed me to discover who I really was as a person. I excelled in my nursing program and eventually landed a position at the local children's hospital. The work was demanding but incredibly rewarding. I had my own cozy one-bedroom apartment that I had decorated exactly how I wanted it. For the first time in my life, I felt truly independent and happy. I had also started dating James, a lawyer I met through mutual friends, about 6 months earlier. He was kind, patient, and understood my complicated family history without judging me for it. We had been taking things slowly, but I could see a real future with him. Everything in my life felt stable and peaceful for the first time ever. That evening, when I opened the door, Patricia immediately launched into her sob story about how she was facing a serious financial crisis and needed somewhere to stay temporarily. She claimed she had lost her job and was behind on rent and that she and the kids would be homeless if I did not help them. The kids stood silently behind her, and I could see how uncomfortable and scared they looked. Ruby had always been a bright, cheerful child, but now she appeared thin and withdrawn. Marcus was clutching an old teddy bear that I remembered giving him years ago, and both kids were wearing clothes that looked like they had not been washed in days. Meanwhile, Patricia was dressed in an expensive-looking dress and had her hair and makeup done perfectly, which struck me as odd for someone supposedly facing financial ruin. Every instinct I had told me to close the door and walk away, but I could not bear the thought of Ruby and Marcus suffering because of Patricia's mistakes. Despite everything that had happened between us, they were still my little siblings and they clearly needed help. So against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let them into my apartment. Patricia promised me that this arrangement would only last 1 week at most. She claimed she had several job interviews lined up and just needed a few days to get back on her feet. She even had tears in her eyes as she told me how sorry she was for everything that had happened between us and how much she had learned from her mistakes. She said she wanted to be a better mother, and that this crisis had made her realize how important family really was. Ruby and Marcus remained quiet during this entire conversation, but I could see the relief in their eyes when I agreed to let them stay. I quickly converted my living room into a makeshift bedroom for them, giving them my spare pillows and blankets. That first night, I ordered pizza for everyone, and we sat together watching movies like a normal family. The next morning, I took the kids shopping for new clothes and school supplies since they would need to attend the elementary school in my district. Patricia came with us and seemed genuinely grateful for everything I was doing. She helped around the apartment doing dishes and laundry without being asked. For the first few days, I actually started to believe that maybe she really had changed. Ruby began opening up to me about her classes and her friends back home, while Marcus showed me the drawings he liked to make in his spare time. Both kids were clearly intelligent and sweet despite everything they had been through. I found myself enjoying having them around and started imagining what it might be like to have kids of my own someday. By the end of the first week, however, I started noticing some troubling patterns in Patricia's behavior. She would get dressed up every morning, claiming she was going out to meet with potential employers, but her outfits seemed more appropriate for a night out than job interviews. She would leave the apartment around 10 in the morning and not return until very late at night, sometimes not until after midnight. When she did come home, she often smelled like alcohol and expensive perfume that I knew she could not afford. Her stories about her day were vague and inconsistent. One day she claimed to have interviewed at a restaurant. The next day, it was supposedly an office job, but she could never provide specific details about any of these places. I also noticed that she was constantly on her phone, having whispered conversations that she would quickly end whenever I walked into the room. Sometimes I would catch her laughing and giggling like a teenager, which seemed inappropriate for someone supposedly dealing with such serious financial problems. The most concerning part was that she was leaving me to handle all the childcare responsibilities while she was out on these mysterious errands. I was working 12-hour shifts at the hospital, and when I came home, exhausted, Patricia would either be gone or getting ready to leave. This meant I was responsible for picking up the kids from school, helping with homework, making dinner, and handling bedtime routines all by myself. One evening, when I was tucking Ruby into bed, she whispered to me that Mommy had been acting this way for a long time, even before they came to stay with me. She told me that Patricia would disappear for days at a time, leaving Ruby to take care of Marcus by herself. This revelation made my heart break for both of them and confirmed my growing suspicions about Patricia's true motivations. The turning point came on a Saturday morning when I woke up and realized Patricia was nowhere to be found. There was just a hastily written note on the kitchen counter that said she had to handle an emergency and would be back soon. No details, no phone number where she could be reached, no explanation of what this emergency might be. Ruby and Marcus were just as confused as I was. Marcus started crying and asking where Mommy had gone, while Ruby tried to comfort him, even though I could see she was upset too. I tried calling Patricia's phone multiple times throughout the day, but every call went straight to voicemail. My text messages were completely ignored. This forced me to cancel the plans I had made with James for that weekend. We were supposed to go hiking and then have dinner at his favorite restaurant, but instead, I found myself trying to entertain two confused and frightened children while wondering where their mother had disappeared to. The first week of Patricia's absence was incredibly challenging for all of us. I had to completely reorganize my work schedule, switching from full-time to part-time so that I could be available to pick up the kids from school and take care of them in the evenings. My supervisor was understanding but clearly not thrilled about the sudden change. During this time, Ruby started revealing more details about their life with Patricia. She told me that their mother had a pattern of leaving them alone for extended periods, sometimes with barely any food in the house. Ruby had learned to cook basic meals and help Marcus with his schoolwork because Patricia was rarely around to do these things herself. Marcus was struggling with anxiety from all the instability in his life. He started having nightmares and wetting the bed, which had not been a problem for him in years, according to Ruby. I made an appointment with a pediatric therapist to help him work through his fears and trauma. Fortunately, James and my best friend Sarah were incredibly supportive during this difficult time. James would come over after work to help with dinner and homework while Sarah offered to babysit on the nights when I had to work late shifts at the hospital. Having their support made me realize how much I had come to care about Ruby and Marcus in such a short time. After about 10 days of complete silence from Patricia, I decided to do some investigating on my own. I looked up her social media accounts, which I had avoided checking for years. What I found there made my blood boil with rage and disbelief. Patricia had been posting photos and videos from Las Vegas showing herself at expensive restaurants, nightclubs, and casinos. The captions on her posts talked about living her best life and finally feeling free. In one particularly infuriating post, she was pictured with several different men talking about how much fun she was having and how she deserved this vacation after everything she had been through. There was no mention of her children anywhere on her social media. No emergency that had called her away, no job interviews, no financial crisis. She had simply decided to abandon her responsibilities and go party in Las Vegas while leaving me to handle everything. As the second week of Patricia's absence dragged on, the situation became increasingly desperate. My savings account was being depleted rapidly by the unexpected expenses of caring for 2 additional people. Groceries, school supplies, clothing, and the cost of switching to part-time work were all straining my budget beyond its limits. My landlord had also started asking questions about the unauthorized occupants in my apartment. While he was sympathetic to my situation, he explained that my lease agreement did not allow for additional long-term residents without proper approval and potentially additional fees. I was facing the possibility of eviction if I could not resolve the situation soon. The stress of juggling work, childcare, and financial pressure was taking a serious toll on my mental and physical health. I was barely sleeping, surviving on coffee, and whatever leftovers I could grab between taking care of the kids and working my shifts at the hospital. James was worried about me and kept encouraging me to seek help, but I felt trapped and unsure of what options were available. Everything came to a head on a Friday evening when my phone rang with a call from an unfamiliar number with a Las Vegas area code. When I answered, the voice on the other end identified himself as Officer Martinez with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. My heart immediately started racing as I assumed something terrible had happened to Patricia. Officer Martinez explained that Patricia had been arrested earlier that day for drunk and disorderly conduct at a casino. Apparently, she had also racked up significant unpaid debts at several establishments and had been causing disturbances when confronted about payment. The officer was calling because Patricia had listed me as her emergency contact and mentioned that I was currently caring for her children. This phone call forced me to explain the entire situation to a complete stranger. I told Officer Martinez how Patricia had supposedly come to me in crisis, left the kids with me temporarily, and then disappeared to Las Vegas without any explanation. He was shocked to learn that she had been posting on social media about her vacation while claiming to be handling emergencies. The officer informed me that Patricia would likely be held for at least 48 hours while they sorted out the charges and debts. More importantly, he mentioned that Child Protective Services might need to get involved since Patricia had essentially abandoned her parental responsibilities by leaving the state without making proper arrangements for her children's care. When I was finally able to speak with Patricia over the phone from the Las Vegas jail, the conversation was even worse than I had imagined it would be. Instead of showing any remorse or concern for her children, she immediately went on the attack against me. She started screaming that I had no right to keep her children away from her and that I was trying to steal them. She accused me of poisoning Ruby and Marcus against her and claimed that I had always been jealous of her relationship with them. According to Patricia, I had manipulated the entire situation and was somehow responsible for her current predicament. The most shocking part of the conversation was when she declared that she had never asked me to keep the kids for more than a few days, and that I was essentially kidnapping them by not bringing them to Las Vegas immediately. She threatened to file charges against me and claimed that everything that had happened was my fault for interfering with her life. During this phone call, Patricia's true narcissistic nature was on full display. She showed absolutely no concern for Ruby and Marcus, no acknowledgement of the financial and emotional burden she had placed on me, and no recognition that her own choices had led to her arrest. Everything was someone else's fault, particularly mine, and she seemed to genuinely believe her own twisted version of events. After hanging up that phone call, I sat in my kitchen and cried harder than I had in years. The woman who had given birth to me was willing to destroy my life and traumatize her own children rather than take responsibility for her actions. I finally understood that she would never change and that any hope I had held on to about our relationship was completely misplaced. James came over that evening and found me in this state of emotional devastation. When I explained everything that had happened, he immediately switched into lawyer mode and started researching our legal options. What he discovered was both frightening and complicated. Technically, since I had no formal custody arrangement or legal guardianship of Ruby and Marcus, Patricia could indeed cause serious problems for me if she chose to pursue legal action. Child Protective Services could potentially remove the children from my care and place them in foster care while the situation was sorted out. On the other hand, Patricia's abandonment of the children could be grounds for me to seek emergency custody, especially given her arrest record and current legal troubles. The next morning, I made the most important decision of my adult life. Instead of waiting for Patricia to return and cause more chaos, I was going to take control of the situation and fight for what was best for Ruby and Marcus. With James's help, I contacted a family law attorney who specialized in custody cases and child welfare issues. The attorney, Margaret Thompson, was a woman in her 50s who had spent most of her career advocating for children in difficult family situations. After hearing my story and reviewing the evidence I had gathered, including Patricia's social media posts, the police report from Las Vegas, and witness statements from Ruby about their living conditions, she agreed to take my case. Our first step was to file for emergency temporary custody of both children based on abandonment and neglect. Margaret explained that we would need to document everything thoroughly and be prepared for Patricia to fight back with her own legal representation. She warned me that custody battles involving narcissistic parents could be particularly ugly because they often use the children as weapons rather than considering what was actually best for them. I spent the next several days gathering evidence and preparing for what was sure to be a difficult legal battle. Sarah helped me organize photos, text messages, and a timeline of events. Ruby, despite being only 12 years old, was brave enough to speak with Margaret about what life had been like with Patricia before coming to stay with me. During these conversations, Ruby revealed details that broke my heart but strengthened our case significantly. She told us about nights when Patricia would leave them alone with no food in the house, forcing Ruby to steal snacks from school to feed Marcus. She described Patricia bringing strange men home at all hours and expecting the children to stay in their room and remain completely quiet no matter what was happening in the apartment. Marcus was too young to fully understand the legal proceedings, but his pediatric therapist provided a report documenting the anxiety and trauma symptoms he had developed as a result of the instability in his living situation. The therapist recommended that both children remain in my care to avoid further disruption and potential psychological damage. When Patricia finally returned from Las Vegas 3 days later, she arrived with a public defender and immediately demanded that I return her children to her. She had somehow managed to post bail and resolve her immediate legal issues in Nevada, though she was facing significant financial consequences from her gambling debts and legal fees. The court hearing for emergency custody took place the following week, and it was one of the most emotionally charged experiences of my life. Patricia arrived dressed conservatively and putting on an act of being a concerned, responsible mother who had been wronged by her eldest daughter's interference. She told the judge a completely fabricated story about how she had been in Las Vegas handling a family emergency involving her elderly aunt and that I had refused to let her speak to her children or return them to her care. She claimed that I had always been jealous of her relationship with Ruby and Marcus and was using this situation to steal them away from her permanently. However, Margaret had prepared our case thoroughly, and the evidence against Patricia was overwhelming. We presented the judge with screenshots of her social media posts bragging about her Las Vegas vacation, the police report documenting her arrest witness statements from neighbors about her history of leaving the children alone, and Ruby's testimony about their living conditions. The most powerful moment came when Ruby herself asked to speak to the judge. Despite being nervous and scared, she clearly explained how much safer and happier she and Marcus had been while staying with me. She described having regular meals, help with homework, and a stable bedtime routine for the first time in years. When Patricia tried to interrupt Ruby's testimony and accuse her of lying, the judge firmly told her to remain silent. The judge could clearly see the difference between a child telling the truth about her experiences and an adult trying to manipulate the situation for her own benefit. After reviewing all the evidence and testimony, the judge granted me temporary custody of both children and ordered that Patricia could have only supervised visitation until she completed a parenting program and maintained stable housing and employment for at least 6 months. The judge also ordered a comprehensive investigation by Child Protective Services to determine what would be in the best long-term interests of Ruby and Marcus. Patricia was furious with the decision and immediately started screaming at me in the courthouse hallway, accusing me of destroying her family and ruining her life. She threatened to appeal the decision and promised to make my life miserable until she got her children back. Even in that moment, surrounded by court officers and social workers, she showed no concern for how her outburst was affecting Ruby and Marcus. Over the following months, Patricia made several attempts to cause problems for me through social media campaigns and harassment of my friends and coworkers. She created fake accounts to spread lies about me and even showed up at my workplace demanding to speak with my supervisor about my supposed unfitness to care for children. However, these tactics backfired on her because they only provided more evidence of her unstable and vindictive behavior. The court-appointed social worker documented every incident and included them in her report, recommending that my temporary custody be made permanent. Meanwhile, Ruby and Marcus continued to thrive in the stable environment I was able to provide. Ruby made the honor roll at school for the first time in her life, while Marcus stopped having nightmares and regained his confidence. Both children were making friends and participating in activities they had never been able to enjoy before. James had been incredibly supportive throughout this entire ordeal, and our relationship had grown stronger as we navigated these challenges together. 6 months after gaining custody of the children, he proposed to me with the understanding that he wanted to help me raise Ruby and Marcus as our own family. When we told the kids about our engagement, they were thrilled and asked if James could adopt them officially. The final custody hearing took place almost a year after that first night when Patricia showed up at my door. By this time, she had failed to complete the required parenting classes, had been evicted from 2 different apartments, and had been arrested again for writing bad checks. The judge had no difficulty making my custody permanent and approving James's adoption petition. Patricia continued to blame me for destroying her life and preventing her from being with her children, but I had learned not to engage with her manipulation tactics. Ruby and Marcus occasionally received birthday cards or Christmas gifts from her, but they had come to understand that the chaos and instability of their previous life was not normal or healthy. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you are born into. I realized that protecting the people you love sometimes means setting firm boundaries even with blood relatives. The hardest battles in life are often worth fighting when innocent hearts are at stake, and standing up for what is right is always better than staying silent and allowing harm to continue. Looking back now, I can see that Patricia's abandonment of Ruby and Marcus was actually a blessing in disguise, even though it felt like a crisis at the time. Those children deserved so much better than the neglect and instability she provided. And I am grateful every day that I was able to give them the safe, loving home they needed to heal and grow. What would you have done if you found yourself in my situation? Have you ever had to make difficult choices to protect someone you love from a toxic family member? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, because I would love to hear about your experiences with difficult family situations. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about overcoming family drama and finding strength in unexpected places. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of choosing love over obligation when it comes to toxic relationships. Thank you so much for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to change even when they share your DNA. I hope you all find the courage to build the family and life you truly deserve.